Hello again, this is Rob Wagoner from Microsoft's TS2, and I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about Windows Server, especially in our small and medium-sized customer space. What can Windows Server do for our customers? I've already talked about Small Business Server and how we can leverage that, but what if our customers need to either continue to grow or they just need a traditional server, not a server with all those additional capabilities? So today we're going to talk more about the traditional server solutions. Which server is right for you? Which server is right for your customer? We have this slide deck that does a good job of going through a decision tree. The link is at the bottom, and I've also included it in my blog. That'll help you make the decisions on which server is right for you and your customer. But as we look at what can servers do for our customers, remember this is a very good place to centrally store their documents, so we know they're always up to date, so we can protect them from disaster, computer loss, things like that. Servers give us a great solution to stay connected, and I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about that. And of course, servers are where we can share our resources and run those internal business applications. As we look at the server comparison, I want to quickly point out that today we'll primarily talk about Windows Server Standard and Foundation. I've already talked about the small business server solutions, and I'll point you to that recording as well. But when we look at Windows Server 2008 R2, where did we focus our energies for you, our customers and partners? Hyper-V, how can I provide a great virtualization solution? Hyper-V gives us that. Remote desktop services, how can I do my thin client capabilities or a remote desktop type scenario? Management, we have to be able to manage our resources, especially in a small environment. The Best Practices Analyzer is one of the greatest tools I've seen for helping us understand what's configured. Is it configured properly? If not, let's give some good guidance. Web capabilities, scalability. While people say in the small space, scalability might not be that important, I think we know better. We have to be able to scale sometimes. We have to be able to quickly deploy new solutions. And then when we talk about combining Server 2008 R2 with Windows 7, we have some great capabilities there, from DirectAccess, branch cache, remote desktop, and desktop connections. I'll talk about that in more detail in a few minutes. But when we look at virtualization, memory management is something we have to be aware of. In Windows Server 2008 R2, we made some significant memory management improvements. They give us the ability to have more virtual machines per host, reduce the footprint of each of those virtual machines, and give the virtual machines the ability to request and receive additional memory as needed. We also made improvements around our remote desktop services, the old terminal services. How can I provide a better experience for my users, whether they're on a thin client or another rich client? How can I give them more capabilities at a reduced cost? So one of the things we did was what's called Remote FX. That gives us this rich media experience even if we're on a thin client. So it gives us that VDI-based experience from these thin clients using the graphic processor in our server host as opposed to demanding so many resources from our client side. It's a great way to consolidate more desktops into a thin client experience if that's the right thing for the business. As we think about remote desktop services and connectivity, we also have to think about how our users connect to that resource. So we have the remote app and desktop web access server, so users within our environment have an easy way to connect to this resource. But if our users are external to our environment, we need to provide secure access for them as well. And we can do that with certificate-based authentication and the remote desktop gateway server. In this scenario, we have a remote desktop connection broker which sits behind our firewall, but the remote desktop gateway server, which is handled through our firewall, can now give us the capability to have these external clients connect securely back to resources, whether they're remote applications or full virtual machines based on remote desktop services, all behind our firewall. Speaking of access from outside our firewall, DirectAccess is another great capability that gives us a full seamless interaction while we're outside of the corporate network. The great thing about this is the connection is transparent to our end user. When the machine comes up, even before the user logs in, the Windows 7 client can make this seamless connection back to your corporate network through the DirectAccess server. And it does all of this while giving you the ability to manage these mobile clients even when they're out on the internet. It's all done via IPsec encryption and authentication, This requires a public key infrastructure, but it gives us this connectivity even over the internet. We do all of this direct access capability based on IPv6, but you don't have to deploy a full IPv6 infrastructure because we also provide these transition services. So if you still have a native IPv4 infrastructure, we do the transition for you over the internet because it's still IPv4 based. The IPv6 packets are carried over the IPv4 network through these transition services. We don't have to wait for the whole internet to upgrade to IPv6 or your whole infrastructure to upgrade either. We must protect our mobile data as well. Windows 7 and Server 2008 R2 do a great job of encrypting our mobile data, even our removable devices like USB hard drives and thumb drives. Windows 7 can encrypt them. We store these encryption keys in Windows Server 2008 R2 Active Directory. Whoever has stolen your hardware has access to the hardware but not the data on it. And by storing these encryption keys in Active Directory, now let's say that piece of hardware fails and we need to swap it out, we have the recovery keys available to us so that that's a seamless, painless experience for the end user. We swap out their hardware, enter this recovery key once, tell the OS to pair with this new hardware, and the user moves on. So as we look at the value proposition for our VARs, we have some great value propositions for moving from Server 2000 or Server 2003 to Server 2008 R2. Remember the virtualization solution for density. Remember branch cache for your VDI improvements. We can give the customer better value for their spend because of the improved density Server 2008 R2 provides in their environment over our prior versions of the OS. For our system integrators, again, plenty of capabilities there as well. How can you meet customer demand with virtualization? Keep in mind, I can build up new workloads a whole lot faster in a virtual environment than I can a physical environment because I don't have to purchase new hardware just to bring a new workload online. For resources, I wanted to provide plenty of resources on Server 2008, Server 2008 Foundation. Please take a look at these. I've included all these links in my blog as well. I thank you for your time and I hope you have a good day.